I spent 2.5 years quietly covering my parents' mortgage, skipping vacations, driving a car with a cracked dashboard, and eating lunches I packed at 6 a.m. Because eating out was a luxury I couldn't justify anymore. And I found out none of it mattered the night my brother stood up at my parents' 35th anniversary dinner and let everyone applaud him like he was the reason they still had a home. I almost didn't go. I want to say that up front because it matters. My manager had been pushing our team through the final sprint of a compliance audit that had already eaten 3 weekends, and I was the kind of tired that doesn't respond to coffee or sleep. My eyes felt like they were filled with sand. I had a tension headache behind my right shoulder that my chiropractor said was stress-related, and my own body said was a warning I was ignoring. But it was their 35th. And my mother had called me 4 times in the week leading up to it, each call a little more eager than the last, each one ending with "You're coming, right? Promise me you're coming." So I drove 2.5 hours on a Friday night in November with a lukewarm gas station coffee and the radio on low. The venue surprised me. That was the first thing. My parents had told me they were doing a small dinner, immediate family only, their favorite Italian place in town, nothing fancy. But when I pulled into the parking lot, I saw a hand-lettered sign in the window. Closed for private event. Inside, the tables had been pushed together into one long arrangement. There were candles. There were flowers, real ones. Not the grocery store carnations my mom usually bought herself. Someone had ordered a tiered cake on a pedestal near the back wall. I stood in the doorway in my work blazer holding a bottle of wine I'd grabbed on the way, doing the math in my head. The flowers alone were probably $200. The cake looked custom. The restaurant's private room rental wasn't cheap either. I had looked into it once, years ago, when I thought about throwing my parents a party myself. The minimum was $400, plus food. I remember thinking, where did they get the money for this? I had been sending them $1,800 a month since January of the year before last. It started because my father had a cardiac event, not a full heart attack, but close enough that his cardiologist put him on restricted activity for 6 months, and his employer, a mid-size HVAC contractor, had to let him go. He was 58. My mother worked part-time at a school district office, and her salary covered groceries and utilities, but not the mortgage. Not the car insurance, not my father's prescriptions, which were running close to $400 a month even with their plan. I was 31. I was a senior financial analyst at a healthcare consulting firm. I wasn't rich, but I was stable. More stable than them. And they were my parents. So I sat down with my mother at the kitchen table over Christmas break, pulled up their statements, looked at the gap, and said, "I'll cover it. Let's set up a dedicated account." We opened a joint savings account at her bank. She was added. I was added. Every month, on the 2nd, I transferred $1,800 with the memo line reading "Home Monthly." She would text me a thumbs-up emoji when it cleared. That was our system for 2.5 years. 54 transfers. $97,200. I'm telling you this, not to sound impressive. I'm telling you because it's the number that was sitting in the back of my head the entire time I stood in that doorway, looking at the flowers and the cake. I went inside. My brother was already there. He'd gotten there early enough to be at the center of things, which was his natural habitat. He's 4 years older than me. His name is not important. What's important is that he has always moved through rooms the way water moves through a drain. Finding the lowest point effortlessly, with everyone else flowing toward him without quite understanding why. He has a charm that is completely disconnected from anything he has actually done. He's been self-employed in some form or another since his mid-20s. Consulting, he calls it. He consults for people he meets at golf events and business networking dinners. What exactly he consults on changes depending on who he's talking to. His wife was with him. She was wearing a silk blouse and the kind of smile that takes effort to maintain for longer than 10 minutes. She air-kissed my cheek and said my name in a tone that conveyed mild disappointment, like she had expected someone taller. My parents were already seated at the head of the table. My mother looked beautiful. She'd done her hair and was wearing the navy dress I recognized from Easter. My father looked better than he had in a while. He had color in his face. He was laughing at something my brother had said. I sat down across from my sister-in-law. My aunt was there, and two of my parents' closest couple friends. A total of 10 people. Cozy, intimate, expensive. The dinner was good. The conversation was easy. I had 2 glasses of wine and felt myself unclenching from the week. My father made a toast to my mother that made her eyes fill up. I thought, okay, this is fine. This is worth the drive. And then my brother stood up. He tapped his glass with a knife. The table quieted. He cleared his throat, and I watched his face arrange itself into the particular expression he uses when he wants to be taken seriously. Chin slightly down, eyes moving slowly across the room. 35 years, he said. Mom and Dad, what you've built is something I hope Liv and I can replicate someday. He smiled at his wife. And I'll be honest with you, this past year and a half has been hard. You guys had some real challenges. But I want you to know that Liv and I were honored to step up. Knowing we could be there for you, make sure the house stayed safe, that you didn't have to worry. He paused, and his voice did a practiced little dip. That's what family is for. He raised his glass. Everyone raised theirs. My mother was crying. My father was looking at my brother with an expression I hadn't seen him direct at me in years. It was pride, uncomplicated, radiant pride. I didn't raise my glass. I set it down, very carefully, on the white tablecloth, and I waited. My father noticed. He turned to me with an expression that had cooled slightly. You okay, sweetheart? Fine, I said, just taking it in. That was true. I was taking it in. I was taking in the flowers, the cake, the silk blouse, my brother's performance, my mother's tears. I was taking in the fact that he had just described, in front of 10 people, a version of the last 2 years in which I did not exist. What happened next I did not plan. I want to be clear about that. I'm not a person who engineers moments. I'm a person who works in financial analysis because I am genuinely comforted by the order of numbers, by the way they tell the truth whether you want them to or not. What I did next was not revenge. It was just accounting. Actually, I said, and I heard my own voice come out quiet and even in a way that surprised me. I'm curious about something. His smile stayed, but his eyes sharpened. You mentioned taking care of the house, I said. The mortgage, the bills. Yeah, he said. It's been a real priority for us. Okay, I said. Which bank do they use? He blinked. What? Which bank holds the mortgage? He looked at my mother for half a second. Just half a second. We handle it through their account. Mom manages the logistics. Sure, I said. And the account, is it the joint checking or the savings? Why are you doing this? My sister-in-law said, her voice low and sharp. I'm just asking questions, I said. I'm a financial analyst. Questions are kind of my thing. My father put his fork down. The table had gone quiet in the particular way that happens when everyone can feel something real underneath the surface of a dinner. What's going on? He asked. I looked at my mother. She was not looking at me. She was looking at her plate. She had known. I had sent the money to an account with her name on it. We had talked on the phone. She had thanked me. You're keeping us afloat, she said once, and her voice had cracked, and I told her I loved her and not to worry. She knew exactly where every dollar had come from. Mom, I said, do you want to explain it, or should I? Explain what? My brother's voice had lost its warmth. He was looking between us now, recalibrating. I opened my purse and took out my phone. I always keep the bank app PIN because I access it constantly for work. Cross-referencing, running projections, habit. I logged in. I went to the joint account. I'm looking at the account right now, I said, and I kept my voice at room temperature. The joint savings account that Mom and I set up specifically for household expenses. I have access because my name is on it. That's private. My sister-in-law started. My name is on it, I repeated. So legally, no, it isn't. I looked at my brother. You said you covered the house, that you made sure the mortgage stayed safe. So I'm looking for your transfers. Can you tell me the dates so I know what I'm looking for? Silence. Not the comfortable kind. The kind that fills up a room like water filling a sealed box. We transferred it to Mom, he finally said. She paid it from her checking. It won't show in that account. Okay, I said. What's the amount you transferred? He said a number. It was vague. Something about around 2,000 and give or take Depending on the month. Give or take, I repeated. Okay. And which account did you send from? Your personal checking or through the business? The business handles our— Look, this is incredibly inappropriate. We're at an anniversary dinner. You brought it up, I said. Not harshly, just factually. You stood up in front of everyone and made it part of the toast. I'm just following the thread. My father was very still. I had worked with enough executives under financial stress to recognize that stillness. It was the stillness of a person who had started to suspect something and was now waiting for the confirmation they didn't want. Dad, I said, can I show you something? He nodded. I turned my phone toward him and walked him through it the way I would walk a client through a discrepancy. Methodic, month by month. September deposit $1,800. Source my personal account, memo. Home monthly, August same. July, same. June same. Every single deposit was mine. There was not one transfer from my brother. Not one with his name, not one from any business entity. I had searched the description fields. I had filtered by amount. There was nothing. I don't see any transfers from you, I said to my brother. I said it quietly. Not one. That's not possible, he said. But his voice had changed. The performance quality was gone. What was underneath was something smaller and less polished. The account doesn't lie, I said. I was not being cruel. I was being precise. There is a difference. Would you like to log into your own account and show us the outgoing transfers? The dates, the amounts? We can reconcile it right here. His wife put her hand on his arm. We need to talk about this privately, she said. Fine, I said. But before we do, can I ask, Dad, when did you last see a mortgage statement? My father looked at my mother. You handle the mail, he said slowly. You said we were paperless. We are paperless, my mother said. Her voice was faint. She was not looking at anyone. I already had the mortgage servicer's website bookmarked on my phone because I had been the one to set up the online account for them 2.5 years ago when we restructured their bills. I logged in. The page loaded. I had been expecting to see current. I had been expecting to see that the $1,800 a month I sent had been going where it was supposed to go. I had been thinking, at worst, that my brother had exaggerated, that maybe he'd helped here and there, small amounts, and had inflated it into a narrative. I was prepared for that. I was not prepared for what I was looking at. Dad, I said, and I heard my voice shift in a way I couldn't fully control. The mortgage is 63 days past due. The table went so quiet I could hear the kitchen. There's a late notice on the account. If a payment isn't made within the next 30 days, the servicer initiates default proceedings. I looked up. You're 2 months from foreclosure. My father's face did something I had never seen it do before. It just concepts, like the scaffolding holding it up had been quietly removed over a long period of time and no one had noticed until it fell. That's not right, my brother said, but there was no conviction in it. He had gone very still, the same way a person goes still when they're deciding whether to run. It's on the screen, I said. I turned the phone so he could see it. I wasn't angry. I had passed through something that felt like anger and come out the other side into a cold, clear place where everything was just information that needed to be processed. Last payment received. September, that was mine. October, no payment made. November, no payment made. Last transfer out of the joint account to the servicer. September. Same date as my deposit. Every prior month the same. Your transfers never appeared because they never existed. We were going through a cash flow issue, my sister-in-law said. Her voice was clipped, professional, like she was managing a PR situation. The business had some delays. We intended to make it right in January. Cash flow, I said. Okay. In the meantime, where did the money from the joint account go? More silence. I filtered the withdrawals. There were Venmo transfers, several, going to an account I didn't recognize with my brother's nickname in the handle. There were 2 wire transfers. There was a withdrawal of $600 in cash in October and another in November. I turned the phone toward my father again and let him read. He read slowly. He scrolled with one finger. He got to the Venmo entries and stopped. These are going to you, he said. His voice was flat. My brother said nothing. You've been pulling money out of the account, my father said. It wasn't a question. It was the sound of a man recalculating everything he thought he knew about the last 2 years. It was a loan, my sister-in-law said quickly. We needed a bridge. We told Mom. She knew. Everyone looked at my mother. She was crying. It was not a dramatic cry. It was the quiet, exhausted cry of someone who had been holding a secret for a very long time and had finally run out of the energy to keep holding it. I didn't know it would get this bad, she said. He said they'd have it back by fall. He said the client payment was coming. I didn't want to worry your father. He's been through so much. I wanted everyone to be okay. Mom, I said carefully. How much did you give them? She pressed her napkin against her mouth. Different amounts. Over the months. I don't know exactly. Can you estimate? She shook her head. She couldn't, or she wouldn't. Either way, the number was in the withdrawals, and I could see it. Roughly $3,400 in transfers and cash out, on top of the 2 months of missed mortgage payments. Here's the situation as it stands right now, I said. I wasn't talking to the table anymore. I was talking to my father because he was the one who needed to hear it most clearly. The mortgage is 63 days overdue. To bring it current before it goes to default, you need to make 2 payments plus the late fee. That's roughly $4,000 and change. I can do that tomorrow morning. I paused, but I need to know what else has happened. Are there any other accounts? Any credit cards, any lines of credit I don't know about? My father looked at my brother. My brother looked at his shoes. There's a Home Depot card, my mother whispered. He put some things on it. For a renovation project. He said he was going to add value to the house before they sold it. A renovation project, I said. What's the balance? I think. She stopped. Around $8,000 whose name is on the card. The silence that followed was the kind that has to it. Dad, I said, is there a Home Depot credit card in your name that you didn't open? My father turned to look at my brother with an expression I had never seen before and never wanted to see again. It wasn't anger. It was worse than anger. It was the look of a man who had been made a fool of by someone he loved and was only now understanding how long it had been going on. I signed something, my father said slowly. He said it was a contractor authorization form, so they'd give him the contractor discount. I opened the annual credit report website on my phone. I had the login for my father's account. I had set it up 2 years ago and kept the credentials in my Secure Notes app in case he ever needed it. I ran the full report. The Home Depot card was there. So was a personal line of credit at a regional bank that I had never seen before, with a balance of $11,000. Both had been opened in the last 18 months. Both were in my father's name. My father's credit score, which had been in the low 700s when I checked it 2 years ago as part of setting up their budget, was now 589. I didn't read the numbers out loud all at once. I had learned a long time ago that a wall of bad news delivered too fast shuts people down. Instead, I walked my father through it one item at a time, the way you walk someone through a dark room, slowly, making sure they know where their feet are before they take the next step. By the time I finished, my brother had stood up. I'm going to call my attorney, he said. It was the kind of statement people make when they have nothing else left and want to sound like they do. That's probably smart, I said, because what's been opened in Dad's name without his informed consent isn't a cash flow issue. It's fraud. At minimum, it's unauthorized use of credit. Depending on how the application was submitted, it could be identity theft, which is a felony. I'm not a criminal, he said, his voice rising. I made some bad decisions. That's different. Opening lines of credit in someone else's name without their knowledge isn't a bad decision, I said. It's a specific type of crime. I'm not making that up. I work in financial compliance. His wife stood up too, pulling her coat from the back of the chair. We are not doing this here. You did it here, I said. You made the toast here. You accepted the credit here. I'm just finishing the sentence. My mother was holding my father's hand. She looked like she was afraid he was going to fall apart, and honestly, I was afraid of the same thing. He was 58 years old and had already had one cardiac event, and I was sitting at his anniversary dinner, telling him that 2 people he trusted had borrowed against his name and brought his house to the edge of foreclosure. But he didn't fall apart. He looked at my brother, really looked at him for a long time, and then he said, "Get out." Not loudly, it was almost conversational. "Dad," my brother started. "Get out of this dinner," my father said. "Take your wife. I'll call you when I've decided what I want to do about the rest of it. But I can't look at you right now." My sister-in-law was already moving toward the door. She had pivoted smoothly from damage control to exit strategy. My brother lingered for a moment, looking at our mother, maybe waiting for her to intervene the way she always had. She didn't. She looked at the table. He left. The door closed behind them, and for a few seconds the remaining 8 people at the table sat in the wreckage of the evening without anyone speaking. One of my parents' couple friends quietly asked if anyone needed water. Someone refilled glasses. My aunt reached over and put her hand on my mother's arm. My father looked at me. "How long?" he asked. $97,200. He closed his eyes. He kept them closed for a long time. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't know." "I know you didn't," I said. "We didn't salvage the rest of the dinner, exactly, but we didn't abandon it either." The cake got cut. My aunt made small talk that was genuinely kind and mostly worked. My parents held hands on top of the table for the rest of the night, which they hadn't done in public that I could remember. On the drive home, I pulled over once in a rest stop parking lot and sat there for about 15 minutes with the engine running and my hands in my lap, not crying exactly, just existing in the aftermath of the evening. The sky was very dark and very clear, and there were more stars visible than you'd expect that close to the highway. The following morning, I wired $4,312 to the mortgage servicer and brought the account current. I sent the confirmation to my father by text. He called me immediately and stayed on the phone for 2 hours, which hadn't happened since I was in college. Over the next 3 weeks, I did a full audit of their financial situation. The Home Depot card was closed with a fraud dispute filed with the issuer. The personal line of credit required a more formal process. My father had technically been present when it was opened, misled about what he was signing, so the bank's fraud team needed documentation and a signed affidavit. I walked him through every step. His attorney sent a demand letter to my brother regarding the unauthorized use of funds from the joint account and the balance owed on the credit lines opened in my father's name. My brother's attorney sent back a letter offering repayment terms. We accepted. I also set my parents up with a financial account structure that I should have insisted on from the beginning. Separate accounts. No joint access for anyone outside of me and them, all mortgage and utility payments on autopay from an account I can monitor remotely. I set up quarterly check-ins in my calendar. I'm not making the same mistake twice. My brother and his wife are renting a 1-bedroom apartment in a town 2 hours away. He still calls my mother on Sundays. She picks up. I've stopped having opinions about that. My sister-in-law has not reached out. I visited my parents in February, a few months after everything settled. My mother made pot roast. My father had started a small vegetable garden in the backyard, tomatoes, peppers, herbs, which the cardiologist had apparently recommended as low-stress outdoor activity. We sat on the porch after dinner, and he showed me the seedlings he had started inside under a grow light. "I've been thinking about what you did," he said without looking at me. He was turning a small terracotta pot over in his hands, not just at dinner, all of it, the 2 years before. "I want to," he said. "I wasn't fair to you." I was dazzled by. He stopped. He always had the bigger personality. I equated that with capability. That was my error. "It's a pretty common one," I said. He set the pot down and looked at me. "You are the most capable person I know." I don't say that like it's a compliment. I say it because it's just what's true, and I should have said it a long time ago. I didn't say anything. I watched a moth circle the porch light. "Thank you," he said finally, "for not letting us lose the house. I'm glad I could be there," I said, and I meant it. Not because I needed the credit, not because I wanted the toast. I meant it because the seedlings were lined up neatly on his workbench inside, and the mortgage was current. And my mother had laughed 3 times at dinner, and my father was out here in the February cold tending to small green things like he had time and a future. Some ledgers don't balance in dollars. Some of them balance in this, in a porch light and a pot of soil, and a father who finally sees you clearly, even if it took longer than it should have.